Hey, welcome back and thank you for joining us for another episode of God's Glory and Men's Real Stories. So who's here for a treat with a community you can say is your own community now? In a place I hope that you can consider a safe space for everyone to feel seen and understood in the stories and conversations you hear today. So sit back and relax in hopes that you can feel God's love as well as see God's glory in men's real stories. So my special guest today is a brother I met in 2022 when I went to a retreat. And I'll never forget how his job was to lay out the space, lay out the rules, and create the space for others to receive and, more importantly, open their hearts. And his number one rule was one that if any of you have ever experienced him, you're saying it in your head right now. And that's don't be a dick. And that's so important when you're in a space like this one where vulnerability is a gift that's being offered. So I want to welcome my brother, Paul McDonald, to the episode.
Hey, Robert.
How you doing? How'd you like that? Was that accurate?
Good. That was good. Yeah, I feel like the world would be better if that was everybody's first rule.
Yeah,
Don't
right.
be a dick.
Right. Yeah, I truly think that should literally be like just people's walk-in note of like, hey, look, by the way, before you get started, like, please don't be a dick. Because I want to say something, or I want to offer up something, or I want to get something off my chest. And you're going to push me back into my cave of like, I'll never do that again if you start off by being a dick.
Right.
So, yeah. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here and I already got that rule out the way.
So I'll do my best to follow my own rules.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Where do I even start? So I'm in my late 40s now. Approaching my 48th birthday.
Okay.
Still get, thankfully or not thankfully, I'm getting the Harris Teeter senior citizen discount, which starts at 60. So I'm showing my age, I guess, these days.
Have you got the procedure already yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, it's just, they'll call it a procedure. But, so I've been married for 13 years now. This is both her and our second marriage.
Okay.
We have 4 kids. Her son is just turned 29. He's got a daughter who is 4, and I've got 3 kids from my first marriage. A daughter who's 21 and has a 3-year-old son, and a son who's 20 down in East Carolina, and then a son who's finishing up his junior year in high school, getting ready to figure out what he wants to do.
Okay.
It's a heavy pressure to put on an 18-year-old. What do you want to do with the rest of your life?
Right.
I'm 48, still trying to figure that out.
Right. I actually had a flashback to that moment of like, I guess I'm going to college. I mean, isn't that what everybody else is doing? Yeah. Okay.
That's what they've told me.
Yeah.
I've spent about 20 years or so as a nurse, working as a nurse primarily around Charlotte for Atrium Health. I was in the military for 4 years. Was in San Antonio, El Paso, even spent some time in Iraq there in 2004. And that was enough to make me say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore.
All right, okay.
So we moved back to Charlotte, and I worked for Atrium Health for about 16, 17 years in management, in education, and on the floor. Emergency nursing was sort of my passion, where I felt most comfortable.
Okay.
Did some teaching as I went along, and it's interesting because what I said was it's my second marriage, right?
Right.
So what happened between who I am today and who I was 2004 coming to Charlotte is a markedly different person.
Wow.
And that's what your podcast is about.
Right. Yeah.
And I can't tell you my story. It's real easy, I think, to say, oh yeah, God's so good. Look at all the stuff he's done. I am so blessed. But there were some dark days.
Right.
Just like going back to that opener, don't be a dick. And I shared it at this last retreat. There's a reason that we picked those clips. There's a reason that I picked that line.
Right.
It's intentional because you show up for a church something and it's a pancake breakfast and everybody's like, I'll be praying for you. God is good all the time. All the time. God is good. And meanwhile, like you're sleeping in separate rooms with your wife, from your wife, you're looking at porn, you're doing all kinds of stuff. You checked out, you're spending 60 hours a week at work. And for me, it was a lifetime sort of looking for validation somewhere else. Like I grew up in a Christian home and going to church, and very small, very conservative. And for my personality, the way the enemy kind of twisted what I heard was, you're nothing. You're worthless. You're a piece of shit.
Right.
And the only reason God was, that question, the evangelism question, if you died tonight, would you go to heaven? Right. My answer is yeah, because Jesus died for me.
Right.
So he's got to.
Right. Right.
I know the answer. Right. Because in my whole life, at the retreat, we show this image of the ideal Christian man looks a lot like Mr. Rogers.
Ah, yes.
And I'm like, well, that's not me.
Right.
I'm a teenage boy with hormones and all these other things, and just trying to hide it so that I'd look like Mr. Rogers. But I knew I wasn't Mr. Rogers on the inside.
You were raging to get out that sweater. This Pima cotton.
This cashmere just doesn't feel right.
Right.
And so I spent a lot of my high school and college days looking for validation from women, particularly. And, John Eldredge, I've read a lot in the last 10 plus years of John Eldredge's stuff, of other people's writing on how dangerous that is. When we give the woman a report card, when we let them validate us, they can also invalidate us.
Right.
And so it's constantly seeking their approval, constantly seeking my validation through them. So, like I said, I went to a Christian school, went to a Christian college. Dude, I went on mission trips to Northern Ireland.
You were the poster boy for the
poster
Christian
boy
community.
for posers, right?
Yeah, right.
And all the while, I'm looking at porn in my dorm rooms when nobody's around.
Right.
And desperate for attention, desperate for validation, desperate for affection, desperate to feel like I belong. And the only way I felt that is through relationships with women. So my parents moved to Charlotte in like 97-ish. I graduated college, came back. I didn't know anybody. There's no cell phones. There's no GPS. There's like, how do I get around Charlotte? Every road's the same name or some combination of Sharon or Queens or
right.
Providence.
And they wrap around and they come back around and it's like, when does it end? When does it start? Yeah.
It's just woods and then bang, a shopping center. Like, I don't know how to get back home because there's no cell phones either back then.
Right.
And so I got really lonely, got married. I mean, dude, I even called off my marriage the first time before it happened because I was so conflicted. I was like, it didn't feel right. I was still doing all this, the internet was coming out. So there's much easier access now to all the things.
Right.
And so we ended up getting married. I mean, left wounds on my first wife's heart. And really most of our marriage, my actions wounded her. So we moved back to Charlotte in 2004. I came back from Iraq and I've been gone for about 5 months, and I just felt in the way. And for somebody who craves belonging, craves fitting, I love my kids. I love my wife. I'm like, I feel like a burden. I feel like I'm in the way.
Right.
And so we came back. We ended up having my youngest. And before he turned 1, I had moved out of the house. Because I was like, I can't do this anymore. It hurts too much. She's not giving me what I need.
Right.
And weirdly, a couple of years ago, I had a friend who was contemplating divorce and having some stuff. And he's like, do you ever regret it? Because like I said, if you look at my life today, it's pretty good.
Right.
I was like, that you can't ask that question. Because one of my biggest regrets is the pain I've caused my first wife and my kids by that decision. Would I change it now? We trust God, right?
I was about to say that. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, God didn't tell you to get a divorce. God didn't tell you to go chasing after the woman on the internet and all this other stuff. Correct. But just like Joseph said, what the enemy meant for evil, God used for good.
Right.
Because, so, you know, grew up in a Christian home, getting a divorce, horrible thing.
Right, right.
And my parents were very instrumental in not alienating me. My dad would tell me he was seeing a Christian counselor, and the counselor was like, "Oh no, you need to cut off ties with him, and you need to not do this." And
wow.
But think of how many people have that aspect, that look on God of
without the counselor.
Right. They're like, "Oh yeah, well, no, we got to cut off that sinful brother." And
right. Push him out, alienate him out. And then it's like, okay, wait, but I came here for refuge, and you guys are treating me and judging me, and
we got to come back to that word. That's a word that popped for me today, refuge. We'll hit that later, I think. Okay.
All right.
You put a pin in that one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we should be taking notes. And so, yeah, but they just continued to show me love. They in grace. And I remember one day I made my mom hang up on me, though, with this, which is, again, comparing that to who I am today.
Right.
Because she was saying something, and she's like, and I remember my response was sarcastic and smart mouth. I was like, "What are you going to do? Pray about it?"
That sounds like totally something I would have said to my mom. Like, I mean, that's what you do with everything. I mean, you always pray about everything. How good
that's worked out so far.
Look at me now. Man, you clearly didn't pray enough, or he's not listening to you, because look at my life now. Like, been there.
Yeah. And so it's interesting, you know, I start getting my master's because I'm a manager, and I'm in nursing, right? Remember, I get my validation from women.
Right.
Now I'm surrounded by a job where it's 90% female.
Right.
And I am doing the best I can, pouring my heart into my job and coming up short. I'm failing there. I basically get asked to leave. They give me, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Wow.
So, and that was, I think, in 2011. And I call it, I didn't say I was unemployed, but I was underemployed. I was making enough money to pay the bills.
Right.
And that was about it. My wife and I got divorced, I think, in 2007, and married my wife now, Stephanie, in 2010. And we worked together. We actually lived in the same neighborhood after my separation. So it's funny. I would go over. I didn't have laundry at my house I was renting. So she said, "Oh yeah, you know, you're in the neighborhood. Come over and do the wash." So I'd go over, do laundry, and hang out with her son. We play video games or watch Lord of the Rings or stuff like that. So,
right.
We did a lot of it, and so we got close that way and started going out. Dude, I even asked her before I asked my wife out. I was like, "Hey dude, can I ask your mom out on a date?"
Oh, what did he say?
He was like, "Yeah, sure."
That's cool. I mean, he was already, I was about to say, he's already your friend. It's like, so if that means you're going on a date, that means I may see more of you. It's like, it's perfect for me.
And so we saw a lot of each other, and we got married. He was 16, and then my kids were younger. I'm not going to do math here on the podcast. But they were all younger.
Right.
You know, between like 3 and 7 or something. And, but my parents came to the wedding, and my brother came to the wedding, and my brother, he had a really hard time with the divorce. And he was in Germany for a long time, and he had his own struggles. You know, I talked about the regrets with my wife and the kids, hurting them. Well, my brother struggled with some stuff in his marriage with his faith, and I wasn't there for him. And that was a heavy burden for me when I found out about it, because you don't find out about it in that time.
Right.
So 2011, I don't really, I have little jobs here and there. They're like interim stuff, couple months here, couple months there. And this whole story, I would say the low part where the curve started heading back up. We were at vacation, and this was everybody. So my wife and I, our 4 kids, a friend of our, Zach's, my oldest, my brother and all his family, my parents were all at a house at the beach. And this was the first time everybody had been there since I gotten remarried.
Right.
And my dad and brother and I, we like playing golf. So we went out to play golf one day, met everybody else up at this little, like a bar out on a deck that they serve food. It's called Limes or something, it's down on the Gulf Coast in Florida. And I'm having a really good time. The rum punch is flowing easy.
Right.
The next day, not so good.
Got it. They flowed too easy.
They flowed too easy. I think my wife said I fell off the bed when I was trying to go to bed, and she was like, "Did you hurt yourself?" And I'm just laying on the floor laughing. And I'm up there, and I'm like, the next day, I'm just feeling horrible, puking, headache, and I'm like, you know what? I see my family 1 month out of the year, and I just lost one of those days. And then we get to the end of the week, and I'm like, I want more than talking football and talking golf. I want, like my dad was going through some stuff. It's like, I want a real relationship with you guys. And so we start emailing. And one of the emails my dad sent, he kind of just said, "Hey, I think you might want to think about going back to church." Because ever since my divorce, I'd go to church when the kids were there.
Right.
But the church I had been in just excommunicated me.
Okay. I was about to ask that. I was about to ask, like, what was the breaking point that kind of just made you say, I'm good on this?
Yeah, it was really interesting back in like 07, 08. And I'm moved out from my first wife and struggling. And I had a friend, because I got a letter that said, "Hey, you're excommunicated."
What?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You got a letter from the church.
Yeah.
That wasn't a church. That was a club. That was a social club or something. Right. That was a country club. And maybe people have experienced that. I could imagine the one place that it's like, I need some place to kind of like just deal with me. And you guys have already kind of closed the door and been like, well, not here.
That doesn't feel safe.
And the sad part about it is in that we kind of look at the door and we look at God like, so you don't want me here anymore? Yeah. You don't want me? Like, I'm not. And
I finally crossed the line I always knew I had crossed internally, right? Mm-hmm. I was like, oh yeah, I'm not worth it. I'm not.
Back to what you had been telling yourself.
Right. The worm theology thing.
Right.
It's like, I'm nothing but a worm. I'm nothing but a sinner. There's like creeds in the church where like, my every thought is a sin.
Right.
And I truly believe that because I knew how crazy my thoughts were.
Wow.
So I had a friend at work and she said, there's this church called Elevation. I was like, I'm getting a divorce. Churches don't want me. She's like, no. I think she's like, church is the last place I need. She's like, no. This one's different. You should go there.
Right.
And I've told this story before, and it's like, this is typically where it's like, and I came, and my wife showed up to church, and God restored our marriage, and all this. That's not my story.
Right.
Because I would sit in church, and what we always hear, it's like Pastor Stephen's reading our mail. It's like he knows what's going on. I was like, how did you hear this text conversation I had yesterday? How did you do that? Like, this is crazy.
That's exactly how I felt. Like, wait a minute now. Like, what is this guy, a psychic or something? Like, this is not a church.
And it was entirely different, from any experience I grew up in.
Yeah.
And over the next few years, when the kids were there, I'd go to church. Because I'd take them to church. I felt like it was important. It had been a part of my life growing up. I still believed the Bible to be true. I just didn't know how it impacted my life. And so when my wife and I got married, she grew up non-churched. They didn't go to church as she was growing up. And that's not really why we didn't go to church. We worked as managers in a hospital. So we're working 50 plus hours a week, 24/7 sort of on call. Like Sunday was like one day we could like sleep in,
right,
and not go anywhere,
right.
And that was really the extent of the desire to not go to church,
right.
And so we went, but so going back, so I hadn't been to church in a couple of years, basically.
Right.
going back, my dad said, "Hey, I think you want to go to church. I think it'd be a good idea." I was like, "That's kind of." I've been feeling that, and honestly, you know, ever since I've been asked to leave, it's like, yeah, but I don't want to like go to church being like, "Hey, I came to church because I want a job. Like I'm unemployed. I need a job. I'll go to church." But so I did, and I remember, I can tell you, it was the first sermon from the series Room 101.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that one now.
There's some good stuff back in the archives,
right?
But it's about feeling like you were meant for something, but being stuck, like not knowing where you're just in this room,
right?
You feel like there's a greater purpose, but you don't know what it is. And I would probably say that was the first Sunday ever God talked to me. And he said, "I'm so glad you're home." And dude, everything
did it pour out?
Everything was different. I mean, I don't think I missed a Sunday for like 3 years.
Oh, wow. Okay, so then I have to dig into that then. Okay, so in hearing that, did it almost work against that thought that you, or what you had told yourself for so long of that I don't belong, I'm worthless, and now all of a sudden somebody kind of confirmed that no, you're exactly where you're supposed to be, and I value you here. Yeah,
this is where you belong. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you're divorced. Doesn't matter what your background is.
Right.
I'm so glad you're home is you belong here.
Right.
And that acceptance and belonging has really, that's one of the bigger challenges for me to accept. I think just sort of from how I'm framed, how I'm set up. There's people who walk around feel like they belong everywhere.
Right.
For me, it's sort of this other question.
Right.
But dude, like that was in the summer. By October, I was volunteering.
Now, what campus were you going to at this time?
Providence.
Okay.
Doesn't even exist now.
Right.
Well, it would become Blakeney.
Right.
So I'm volunteering. I'm on the parking team. Start meeting some guys. You know, even meeting another guy who's been through a divorce. So we're like, you know, we talk a different language. You know, when you got your kids, you're like,
right.
Yeah, I got my kids this weekend. I can't do it.
Right. He understands that. Oh yeah. I get mine next week. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, cool. Let's try to sync up. And I know all about that.
And and then I end up like the next summer I start a men's group for guys who are going through divorce or have been through divorce. And that next like September of 2013, I get baptized. It was kind of funny because I was like, oh yeah, I want to help with baptisms. And I'm in the first meeting and I talked to my campus pastor. I was like, I kind of feel like I'm supposed to get baptized.
Right. Is there a requirement that I have to get baptized before I help with others?
The church I went to, I was 5 and got baptized. They did the infant stuff. And I was like, you could convince me. It's like, yeah, I can understand the reason for infant baptism, child baptism. But I think there's also power to the, I guess, believer's baptism.
Right. When you make that choice to go public.
Now I'm on his team.
Yeah.
And so that was September of 2013. I went to my first time at the retreat that we talked about, where the big Friday night reveal, the kind of earth shaking thing. What if God's not mad at you? He's mad for you. And like I left that. One of my friends was there. I was like, dude, I need to talk to you. And we go out back and I just slob all over his shoulder for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because, like almost 40 years at that point, almost 40 years of believing that God's mad at me.
Right.
It's like, no, dude, God's not mad at you. You have an enemy that God is angry. That's where his focus is. All his anger was poured out on Jesus.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you do today, yesterday, or tomorrow.
Right.
That you're forgiven.
Right.
Full stop. The rest of your life, you're free. Anything you do, you're still forgiven. Right. It's not like we have to like do this every day. It's not like we crucify Jesus every day.
Right.
And so just embracing that identity of who I am in Christ. And that was one of the first meetings from that group. It's like, he's like, yeah, I'm Paul. I'm a nurse.
Right.
No, that's not who you are. That's
right.
what you do.
Oh, yeah. Because
you're the son of God. You are, royal priesthood. You are a masterpiece.
Right. But you're right, though, because we do get so confused. Like, think about it. Normally in those circles, you start to call out what your addiction is. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, I'm Robert, the alcoholic. Or, hey, I'm Robert, I'm still fighting off drug addictions or this or that. We all have our thing. And we sometimes hide behind that thing, or that's our identity to people. Like, oh, yeah, this is. Yeah. But, yeah, no.
And that's what we talk about, at the retreat. Our wounding can become our identity because we embrace it.
Right.
It's like, I'm a victim of sexual trauma.
Right.
I'm a this, I'm a that. And what I love, and I think even Pastor talked about it this week, is we distort God's name. Because what's God's name but I am? And we say, yes. I am this.
Right.
No, that's not who.
Right.
That's not who I said you are.
Right. That's so good.
I mean, look at Moses. I don't talk so good.
Right.
Shut up already. Do what I told you to do.
Right. Who
made your mouth?
And then the sad part about it is in continuously sitting with that, or that's not who I am, or that's not what I can do. Then you get to watch God say, who's standing beside you then? Yeah. I'll use him then. Yeah. Since you can't, and you get to watch me work through him to do what you didn't want to do.
Right. And so, for the last over 10 years now, it's been a journey of restoration, of transformation. And now my kids are older, going through that struggle. Both of my older two have had children that were surprises. My daughter, we found out, was pregnant before she graduated. And that revealed stuff about me of how I wasn't being a good father. Because I remember talking to my therapist. We talked about this before. It's like, yeah, counseling's great. I get a lot of stuff from God while I'm in counseling, because it's like, oh yeah. Her boyfriend, who they were the same age, so like 18, 19. And talk about another list of the regrets. He comes from a very dysfunctional family. His dad was in jail, older brother in jail. They moved to North Carolina to get away from the drugs lifestyle that they had lived in. Like their siblings stole from each other, and they were okay with it. And that was the lifestyle. And so I'm frustrated with that. I was like, why are you choosing a dysfunctional family like that when you've had a different model? And I'm not understanding, and my therapist is like, so basically you're trying to manipulate her to do what you want her to do.
Right.
This close to slamming my laptop shut, because we're doing the telepsych, it's like,
I didn't pay you to hear this. I don't need this from you. All right. Don't I pay you?
That's actually, I had a meeting with him today, and I'm like, oh, he's like, yeah, you don't pay me to make you feel better. I'm not a prostitute.
That's good. And it's so true, because the truth is we need the truth from them. And it's not so much that they say a lot. They're listening to us. But when they do, sometimes it's like, wait a minute, whose side are you on?
Right.
And they're on the side that they're trying to get you to.
Well, it's what James talks about. It's looking in a mirror.
Right.
And that's what they are, is the mirror.
Right.
This is what you look like. And that was what he said. If she does have problems with her boyfriend, why would she tell you about it? Because you haven't created that relationship. She wouldn't tell you. She would, because it'd be like, oh, I told you so.
Right.
And so it's changing me. God's transforming me through parenting my children as they get older. It's so much harder parenting them as they get older. And
tell me this, would you say that it's become easier as you transform and as you see things and can look at your own wounds and then look and realize that they carry the same wounds that you at one time carried, to like say, wow, okay, I can speak into that where if I had held on to that wound, I'd have just been, the only thing I could say is, this is just how it is, son. This is life.
That's life.
This is life, and this is just what you gotta. This is what men have to deal with. Instead of now being like, that's not. You don't have to do that anymore.
Part of it was, how I talked about like giving the women, for us, our wives, power to validate or invalidate us.
Yeah.
We do the same thing with the kids. How are kids? Oh, is my kid good at sports? Is my kid getting good grades? Are they going to school? Are they getting pregnant outside of marriage? That becomes your qualification for being a father.
Ooh.
When you give them that power of what they do, their decisions, if they eat all their vegetables.
Right.
Got to be one of the biggest fights in the house. Eat your food. And when this last time I just got back visiting my son out in Greenville, and this was the first time we'd spent more than, a day together since he went to college, almost 2 years ago. And I told him, I was like, hey, I'll be here 3 nights. I'd love it for you to spend 1 or 2 nights at the hotel with me, just to have some of that downtime doing nothing. And we would go out, we watch Creed 3, and we're driving back to his apartment so he can get his car. He's going to grab his stuff. And I was like, dude, I feel like there's something you want to say. I feel like you're holding something back. He's like, yeah, there is. It's like, Dad, I really like my space. I want to stay in my bed tonight at my place with my friends. I was just like, dude, that's fine.
Right.
And for many years, I would a lot of times not say what I wanted, not express that. Like last year, my brother and dad came in to town for the golf tournament. They're like, yeah, we'll come in. Like we had tickets for Saturday and Sunday. We'll come in Friday and leave Monday. It's like, I was wanting more. Like I was wanting something more like this.
Right.
And like with Brendan, I was like, yeah, you can say no and it's okay because I've told you what I wanted. I've expressed that to you. And it's not an indictment on me as your dad that you'd rather hang out with your friends.
Right.
A 47, 48-year-old dude's not that much fun to hang out with when you've got your college buddies and girls and all this other stuff going on.
Right.
And like he comes home and I'm like, man, we're so boring. We're just like sitting around doing stuff or like in bed by 9 or 10. That's when he's like waking up, starting to pregame.
Right.
And so for me, that's sort of that a little bit of the full circle to say, oh, because it's really easy to get frustrated to see. I mean, what I told my therapist today, I feel like this is a broken record. I feel like it's the same thing we've been talking about for years. And yet, when I look back 10 years ago, I don't even need to look back 10. I can look back 2. I could look back 1. Say, oh, yeah, this is who that guy was. I mean, I go back 20 years. That dude's a mess.
Right.
All the things. And now who I am today is a radically transformed person.
Right.
That to me, it feels like a whole different life. Like that guy actually doesn't exist anymore. That guy who's susceptible to flirting with women or going after them or, cheating on my wife type of stuff. That dude doesn't exist.
Right.
And, I mentioned porn. Porn hasn't been an issue for me for like years.
Right.
Previously, like 30 years, yeah.
Right. It was almost
Right.
like just a random go-to. It just was a part of your schedule. Okay, schedule.
Wife's going to the grocery store. I got an hour.
Right. Where's that laptop at? Yeah, no. Yeah.
I mean, real stories. And this is one of the reasons I don't think I ever finished the thought going back to the don't be a dick.
Right.
It's not a pancake breakfast in the church basement.
Right.
This is, your life is real. Your life is problematic. and I think I even said your life is rated R.
Right. I was about to say,
best.
yes, at best.
There's scenes in my life that NC-17, there's stuff you shouldn't see.
But those scenes normally they're not talked about, and they don't want to be talked about in church because it's like we have to keep it PG-13.
We gotta
but
be
you're
polished.
right. We have to be well polished. But the truth is none of us are polished.
It's not PG-13.
Nothing about it.
It's less because PG-13 you get one F-bomb.
That's true. That's true. You're right. So you're right.
So it's not even that level.
Yeah.
You might see some ass in PG-13.
Right. And the sad part about it is my mom. I remember, and I love my mom, but she used to try to keep our life so G-rated. I mean, even down to like what we ate, what we watch. Oh, what is the rate? No, we can't watch that. And so it was like, okay, we're going to keep you so far from what you're eventually going to have to live that it's going to frighten you when you get to that space of like what life really is really like.
Yeah.
So if I can frighten you back into the G-rated stuff, then we'll be good. And it's like, yeah, but we all end up having to walk out here and realize, whoa, okay, wait a minute. Where'd that come from? Or what? Hold up. Is this how the real world looks?
Right.
And realize that I'm not quite prepared for this. Real life, real stories is even perfect example. Men's real stories. There's nothing about it that's G-rated.
No.
And there's nothing about it that at a certain point we can try to like downplay it like it's not. Like even trying to pretend like it's not on Sundays. Like everything is so beautiful and polished, and don't let somebody all of a sudden take the conversation to be like, hey, well, look, what are we doing on Friday night? Whoa.
How are you really doing?
Right.
Like no, we don't talk about that.
Right.
Everything's good.
Yep.
Everything's golden.
Yeah.
And that's what. But one of the things Pastor said a few years ago is God can't bless who you pretend to be.
Ooh.
We stole that line.
Is that where we got it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Patrick stole that line several years ago. So.
Okay. Yeah. And I've been saying that too for quite a while. And that it's, you know what? I couldn't say it for so long because I wanted him to bless who I was being. I wanted him to bless me like this is who I am, God. So like bless it, not realizing that he's looking at me like, no, I know you.
Right.
I know who you are.
Right.
That's not who you are. And I can't like anoint or bless that. Like, because imagine what you would do with it if I did bless it. Mm-hmm. If I let you know that that's okay. You would just feel like, oh, I'm untouchable then.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no, that's good. That's a good point.
Well, that's what kind of going off on a rabbit trail and a podcast full of rabbit trails. But
Pretty
that's
much.
what Pastor Paul talked about this weekend in the volunteer rally is, he's talking about Palm Sunday and Jesus comes in on a donkey and everybody's yelling Hosanna, which I'm thinking is sort of like hallelujah.
Right.
It's like, is save us. And they wanted Jesus to save them from Rome.
Right.
And then but he's like, that's not my job. That's not my mission.
Right.
I'm going to disappoint you.
Right.
Which is a good thing. And I think Tozer says God can't use a man fully unless he disappoints him completely or crushes him utterly or something along those lines.
So true. It's true.
But then what Paul said is, if you look at all the miracles, they come on the back end of disappointment. And I started thinking, I was like, holy crap.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that moment where
you gave the blind guy sight. How many years was he blind?
Right.
The paralyzed guy coming in through the roof. How many? 30. The guy at the pool at Bethesda, 38 years. Lazarus had to die. Dude had to die
before he. Yes.
Even the water into wine. The panic that the bride and groom and the father had to feel knowing they were out of wine. Like, there is no miracle that happened in a good place.
Right.
And I mean, go back to the Old Testament, right? You've got the
That's
separating.
Good. Wow.
Look at the Israelites on the edge of the Red Sea.
Yeah.
Just like
in the midst of like panic and terror.
We are getting run down by these chariots.
Right. Why did you bring us out here to die?
Right. And then God shows up. And then God does the miracle. But that's like I don't want that. I want everything up and to the right. I want comfort. We're reading through the New Testament. And one of the things that Paul, we know the story of Paul in Damascus, and he gets knocked off his horse and he's blind and goes to Damascus, and he says, "Why are you, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" And he's like, "All right, go in there." And he's struck blind. And then God shows up to this dude, Ananias.
Right.
He's like, "Hey, I need you to go see this dude, Saul." Like, and Ananias talks back to God. He's like, "Do you know who this dude is? Right. He's got papers to put me in jail."
Right.
He's like, no. He's my guy to the Gentiles, and I'm going to show him how much he's going to suffer. Like, whoa, what? That sermon's not preached much.
That was a little dark.
Right? And what happens when he starts preaching the gospel in Damascus? Death threats. He has to leave through a basket in the wall.
Yeah.
He goes to Jerusalem. What happens? Death threats. He has to leave Jerusalem. Like, everywhere Paul goes, he's assaulted, he's attacked, he's got that list, of shipwrecked and stoned and all this. And it's so hard for me, where I am today. Because like I said, I look at, my wife, my kids, my grandkids, the fact that I haven't worked as a nurse this year. I'm taking care of my wife. She's got a high level position. She's pursuing her doctorate program. I'm like, I need to be available for her. Mm-hmm. I need to be available for my daughter and grandson to help them. Because story of restoration is my daughter and I are in great terms now. Right. I helped her buy a car this weekend because her old car crapped out and transmission didn't work. And so I helped her walk through that process.
Right.
Where that doesn't happen 3 years ago. But what I feel like God's teaching me to learn now is he's still faithful. My calling is still true even when it's opposed. And, we talk about the enemy, we talk about opposition, and whatever that means, however that manifests for us. But this idea, like, if I'm Paul, I'm Paul, but if I'm back to the Apostle Paul.
That was so weird because I was like, wait, but he is Paul.
I'm so confused. If I'm the Apostle Paul and I'm like, okay, I'm following you, God, death threats, getting beaten, getting flogged. Flog's no joke.
Right.
I'm like, I must have heard wrong.
Maybe I heard right.
This is the enemy trying to get me here. Because look where I'm ending up.
Right.
And to sort of wrestle with that we have to go through it.
Okay. Go ahead.
Because I'm going back to that pin.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to go there tonight, but apparently I am because you use that term refuge.
Okay.
So I told you my daughter, her car, she was like up in the north side of town, an hour away. Mm-hmm. She calls me last week and says, "Hey, Dad, my car won't go forward. It'll only go backwards. I'm on the side of the road. I have plans with my wife. I'd been out of town for a week. We had tickets to a show. We were going to dinner. And I felt pressure to rescue her." That was a word that kept coming up. Rescue. You need to go rescue her. She's 21, right? Like, no, and I walked her through this. Your insurance includes tow. Get them to tow it to a place. Your brother, who's 16, is at the soccer field. He's like 20 minutes away. He'll come pick up you or the kid, my grandson, because you don't want to be stuck in a car for an hour with a 3-year-old.
Right.
And I even said, Andrew went to rescue them. But the idea of rescue, and this I actually talked about on another podcast today, which I was like, man, that's really good. Rescuing is what we want, which is like God helicopters in and takes us out of the situation.
Right.
And he does that sometimes. But refuge is he's in it in the storm. Right? He's like, yeah, it sucks.
Right.
It's hard. You're getting beaten, you're getting flogged, but I'm here with you.
Right.
And wanting rescue isn't bad. Jesus wanted rescue.
Right.
We're coming up on Easter. I don't know when this will go. Maybe next Easter.
Right. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see what God has planned.
But that whole idea that, like, I want rescue, but God promises refuge. And that, like I said, that came up in a conversation I had on the Mad Lit Musing podcast. If you guys want to check that out, it's a off the wall, super fun conversation with the person who helps me with my social media stuff.
Nice.
And she's an award-winning author and all this. So she's like, yeah, come on the podcast. We have conversations just like this.
Right.
Maybe not just like this. She was a little different.
Right.
We know each other.
Right.
And, but that idea, like the rescue versus refuge, and how often I want God to rescue me. And he's like, no, but how much closer does he bring us by being a refuge? Through going through the stuff.
Because we have to depend on him more in that.
Yeah. And then like going into this last men's retreat, it was a dark month for me. Like I was like, I want to see God's, I haven't felt God's smile. And I mean, that got me going back to the therapist because like I feel hopeless. I feel like not getting out of bed, struggling with this. But there are these snapshots and moments from that weekend. And about 2 days before the retreat happened, I'm like, oh, the cloud lifted. I was like, oh, I'm on fire again.
Right.
I was like, oh, like we were talking about the download of the Holy Spirit. I'm like, oh, let's pray into that.
Right.
Let's go after this. There's guys who are under it, who like, if we as the leaders are experiencing this sort of oppression, how are guys who don't even have this as a category? How are they even going to make it? It's like, we got to pray for these guys because, man, this is under attack.
Right.
But that like rescue just lifts us out, but we don't learn anything.
True. Because next time we go back into that storm or that fog
we don't
goes down, we don't even know how to get through it. Right. And that's good.
What is it that line about the sailors, the skilled sailors are the ones who know how to handle the storm or something like that? Or
I don't know if I've ever heard that line,
it's
but
something along that of basically the only way you become a skilled sailor is by sailing through terrible storms.
Right, because then you can easily sail through calm water.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is no sweat.
Yeah,
it's only a Category 1 hurricane.
But notice how you said you learn how, not like God took me through it, because when He just pulls us through things and doesn't pull things through us, then we're stuck sometimes trying to figure it out the next time it comes around, the next time the storm hits us. And I speak about that even when it comes to like trauma, carried trauma. God, can't you just take this? I don't want to feel this anymore. I don't even want to deal with that. Yeah, but if I took that from you, then what happens? You act as if that's the last time you're ever going to experience a traumatic issue or a traumatic event in your life. You're going to go through trauma again. And if I remove that from you, what will you do next time? All you'll be able to do is come back to me and ask me to lift it again. Yeah. It's in the work that we do. It's in the work you're doing now. It's in the work I'm doing now that helps us get through those storms when they come back down, when they come around, when people try to hurt you or break you or put you in situations where you're like, wait, I didn't see that coming. Like, why would that happen, God? I thought we were on the same page.
I thought we were cool.
Yeah, like, why would you do me? And it's like in those moments where we're like, you took me through this before, so I know exactly what to do in this moment. And a big part of that is getting closer to you, remembering that you're here, even like just like last time when I went through this. And that is huge. And even when you were talking about God's miracles at the tail end of defeat, or or a plane going down or whatever it may be, would we recognize it if it was on our up moments when everything is smooth sailing and everything is great and all of a sudden I get a check for $1,000? Am I even going to be in a place to where I can be like, wow, God, thank you. Like, I recognize
wasn't that the verse from Habakkuk is like, I'm going to do something and you wouldn't believe it if I told you.
Right.
But that's how you know it was me.
Right.
Because it's going to be so incredible. There's no other explanation.
Right. It's
that's
like
the Paul paraphrase of some verse somewhere in the Bible.
Right. No, and I'm trying to dial it in right now. Normally I have like an iPad here where I can look up things on the run, but it's like, no, I know exactly what you're saying, and it's like, yeah, those are the moments where it's almost like God winks and reminds you that I've been here this whole time. Yeah. I got you. You just keep trusting me.
Yeah, dude, I was I was leaving the retreat on Sunday morning a little bit early. I hate leaving early. I got severe case of FOMO of what I'm missing out on.
You missed out on a ton.
Yeah, so much. I know. I didn't get my picture taken at the top of the mountain. But I'm listening to this podcast, and they're talking about, how God's sort of given them heart rocks. They'll go around and they'll find rocks shaped like a heart, or they'll see heart in the clouds or hearts here. And every time they see it, they're just like a little wink from God saying, yeah, I love you. And he's talking about, there was a time where I hadn't felt like felt like I'd seen one. Well, it's because he'd like had some sort of a mouthy experience and was like, God, can I get more than a little heart rock? So he didn't get any for a while. And he's like, I'm walking through this pasture and say, I haven't seen these in a while. And he's like, I walk up on a big cow patty that's shaped like a heart, because that's God's sense of humor.
That's exactly how he would do. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you want a heart rock? Here you go.
Take that home with you.
Yeah. And as I'm driving, thinking on the weekend, realizing my struggles with feeling like I belong, feeling like, and I've been doing this, walking deeply in this message for 10 years, and I'm still having these issues.
Right.
And it's like, I don't remember seeing a heart rock. Like, am I worthy of a heart? Am I worthy of this? And no joke, 5 seconds later, I drive by a billboard with a giant heart on it.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
And so I'm like, as we talk about, we like, no, there's a lie that I don't belong. There's a lie that I'm not worth. I had some guys offer to do something, and it made me real emotional. That I was like, and they're like, well, what's behind that? I was like, I have a hard time receiving love and sort of service. They're like, hey, yeah, man, we're going to come. We're going to do this thing for you that you don't know how to do. It's like, yeah, I spend so much of my life making it up as I go along, as we talked about with these podcasts. Mm-hmm. I was like, dude, I'm making it up. I'm learning from you two. I don't have anybody saying, yeah, this is what you need to do, all this. And as I'm, 5 seconds after that heart, I'm like, I bind and banish that spirit, that lie. That's a lie that I'm not worthy.
Right.
Because through Christ I am worthy.
Right.
And again, in the middle of me praying against that fear and that sense, the song I Am the One He Loves comes on. Mm-hmm. And the sun's coming up in front of me because I'm heading east. And it's like, yeah, I receive your love. Yeah, I believe it. I receive it. And just let that wash over me as I'm driving east.
Yeah. Yeah, who's cutting onions here? I don't care, but I'm here to watch them. Like, yeah, those are those moments where I love those moments, because you're right. It is almost like a reassurance of I'm here. And like you said, just letting them wash over you with praise and worship sometimes. It's a moment of just like being able to just like say, I appreciate you being here in this moment. Like I needed comfort right now. I needed to be reminded right now. I needed to be affirmed right now. And I love how God uses situations. He uses people to affirm us, to inspire us, to even encourage us. Like, because a lot of times we're always like, God, did you like that? Right. Did you appreciate that? And you have a ton of people come up to you like, hey, that was great. God, did you like that? And he's like, I'm letting you know that I loved what you just did, to give me the glory in that moment, to be able to allow me to work through you. And now I'm going to show you how much I appreciate that. And it's, Well,
I love your posture change. Like, because we're like, oh, like us, like, God, I want to do something so bad. Right. I want to advance the kingdom. I want to bring life change to men. And we get like this. And that exhausts us. Right. And what you did was, and that's so much more restful. Right. And that's what he said. He's like, my way is easy.
Right. My yoke
You'll find rest for your soul, all that stuff. Yeah. And we're like, oh, it's not up to me. I don't have to do it all. I don't have to know it all. Right. I'm just going to depend on you to provide. I'm going to let your wind fill my sails. Yeah. Yeah. Guide me where I want to go.
That's good. Yeah. And stop being so tight on this steering wheel that I'm trying to control my life with by trying to hold on to everything that's getting out of whack. And, wait, they're doing that, trying to steer it back. And it's like, God, I'm going to trust you right now. I'm going to let go of this wheel, knowing that whatever happens next, I can have faith that you're going to see me through this. And I can truly just let go and just have a different posture of just like, I'm going to rest now. Even in the midst of the whims that are going crazy, the storm that's going to, I'm going to come to the back of the boat and sit with you and rest right now in the midst of everything that's going crazy because I trust you. And if you can sleep through this, then I can too.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and it's like, oh, wait, he's sleeping. What am I freaked out about?
Right.
And it's not to say that there's not hard stuff.
Yeah.
Like, again, going back to Jesus, Jesus is the model. He went through it. He begged for rescue.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good.
But he submitted to the refuge.
Right.
Even when it felt like God wasn't like, God, why have you forsaken me? If Jesus felt like that, so are we.
Right. And
when we do, that's actually we're actually suffering with Jesus.
Right.
Right. We don't, if most of us who live in the U.S. these days, we're not getting flogged.
Right.
We're not getting beaten. We're not getting put in jail for our faith.
So right. Yeah.
Despite the what we see of some believers freaking out about the oppression and the persecution, like nobody's persecuting us.
Not here in America. Absolutely
no,
not.
they
How
disagree.
dare we say that? Right.
Disagreement is not persecution.
Correct.
And man, I just want to love the person in front of me because that's what Jesus does. And it doesn't. I can't fix the social, societal, cultural, whatever you want to say, the umbrella of stuff that the world brings.
Right.
I don't have an answer for the racial stuff, for the gender stuff, for all the stuff.
Right.
But you know what I can do? Love the dude who's in front of me.
I was just about to say.
And honor and respect them and just love the hell out of them.
That's so good. And you're right. You're right. And that's the easy part because then you don't have to have an answer for it.
Yeah.
You don't have to like try to put, well, let me see what God thinks about it. Like, let me, well, I mean, I don't, you know what? I disagree and I still love you.
Right. Because how easy is it? Again, that's what Jesus said. Anybody can love their friends.
Right.
Love the people who are your enemies.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know about abortion. I don't know about gay rights. I don't know about any of this. But I do know I'm called to love one another. Mm-hmm. That's how people know that Jesus exists, is because we love each other.
And they can see your fruit, and they want that light that
Which
you
I think goes back to the end, right? Don't be a dick.
Right.
Or it goes back to the beginning. Don't be a dick. Love one another.
Right. Yeah.
That's so I think good. Sitting around the fire with some fish, I bet Jesus was like, hey, Peter, come on, man. Don't be a dick.
Right. That's so good. That's so true. That's awesome. Hey, look, that was a good. I love how you just brought that all the way. See, you can tell when I sit down with a podcaster because see, he knows how to like steer it all the way back around and soft landing. Like that was
like
good.
Like a butterfly with sore feet.
That was good. I was good. Well, hey, I appreciate this conversation. I truly enjoyed this. It's crazy how for a second there I kind of forgot that we were even like doing this. Like we were like because you're right. We could do this and talk about like just the things we've experienced. I mean, we could have had a whole episode on just the things we saw at the retreat outside of us, but no. This was exactly what it was supposed to be, and
nothing that we actually prepared.
Right, exactly. The preparation sometimes it's nothing wrong with preparing, but I prepared by like making sure the lights were turned on, making sure everything was like recording well, and that was all the preparation
making
needed
sure
at that
Justin's
point.
Awake.
Yeah, and and he is right now. But yeah, like everything else is just kind of like left up to God to say, all right, God, now you lead us. You tell us how this is going to go. So this went exactly how it was supposed to.
We put the oars in the boat and let the wind take the sails, right?
That was awesome. Yeah. It reminds me of that Elevation Rhythm song where you just kind of like say, God, at this point, I'm putting my sails up. You take me where you want to take me.
Yeah.
You take me anywhere. I'm here. That's good. Well, brother, I love you. I
This was
appreciate
awesome.
you. Yeah, this was. I appreciate you coming and sitting down with me. This was great. This is honestly a great conversation. And I think all of them are, but everyone is unique in its own special way. I get something from it. I literally go back and later on I'm just unpacking like, wow, that was good. Like that made me think more. Like, wow, that was good. So thank you again. Matter of fact, here, let me let you get the last words. Do you have anything you want to leave my audience with or anything like that, since we're now focused back on the audience and not just
Us talking.
Yeah, right.
No, man.
All
Actually,
right.
no.
I think you gave it all to him. You poured everything into him, and there's nothing wrong with that. I love that. Yeah.
I just look forward to having you on my podcast talking about the Green Mile.
Yeah, man, you just already put it out there, but yeah, I like so what you
can't
guys
back
just
off
yeah,
from
I
it
was about
now.
to say now it's been recorded, so I guess I can't come back, but
not
yeah,
live,
look
you
forward
can
to
edit
seeing me
out.
on his podcast and in the future. I will be unpacking a great movie, as he just said. So I appreciate everybody joining us today. Thank my team back there, making sure everything works out right. I appreciate you. And yeah, that's it. That's it. Call it a wrap. Thanks so much, guys, for joining us.
We appreciate you listening today and hope that if you enjoyed this episode, you'll like and subscribe and also listen to past episodes. We hope to bring you great future content as well. Please comment your thoughts on this episode as well as leave any prayer requests below so that this community can pray alongside you. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook at God's Glory and Men's Real Stories.
Brothers, we understand how the thoughts of even facing your own past and current story and the pain and hurt that come along with this is no easy task. But you're not alone, as you hear in these episodes. Nor has God forgotten you or left your side, as He's in it with you, fighting alongside you through the storms of life. He loves and has already forgiven you, no matter what you have done, and He wants a relationship with you. Your healing, freedom, and growth are important to God and to us as well. Maybe you're considering giving up or need someone to talk to. Here are a few resources that exist that we hope can shine a light into that dark place you're in. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number is 1-800-273-8255. If you need support but are not in crisis, consider reaching out to a warm line with individuals who would love to talk with you. Speaking to someone on these calls is typically free and confidential and run by people who understand what it's like to struggle in life. Find a local number by going to warmline.org.